Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Couch GMs podcast on Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. I'm your host, George Kerth, and back live from the Batcave, Tyler Snyder's with us. Tyler, how you doing?
Who?
I don't know.
Some guy. I don't know. We picked him off the street, told him to get on his computer.
Somebody approached me and said, hey, we need somebody to do some hot takes for an hour. And I said, yeah, sure, why not? I'm not doing anything. So I hopped on.
Props to our team to get him on the logo that fast, too, picking him off the street. That was impressive.
Absolutely. Well, George, I don't need to be introduced because I'm on every week, but I think the biggest hot take Tyler's going to do is saying this show is for an hour. We normally go over an hour here, but nice hot take kicking us right off.
Yeah, we'll see how close to an hour we get today as we talk some NFL news and notes, and we do a 2-round Dynasty Rookie Mock Draft. We talked a little bit of rookies last week. Now we're going to tell you who you should take to get yourself to the next level in your Dynasty leagues. It's helpful for redraft too, so if you're not in a Dynasty league, don't worry. Stay tuned. We're going to give you a lot of helpful information as we move through the show. Make sure you find us on thecouchgms.com and our social media channels to learn more than you learn just from this podcast. Guys, right in NFL news. And we mentioned it on the top of the show last week. There was going to be some news that we knew was coming and we could not talk about, and that was the international games were announced. As well as earlier this week, we had a couple of select games that were announced towards the schedule. The full schedule will come out on Thursday at 8 p.m., so if you're interested on who your team's going to play when, make sure you're tuned into NFL Network, or I believe ESPN is covering it as well. But let's talk some international games. The big news to me, 4 quadruple headers for the NFL this year, as all the London games and the Germany game will be at 9:30 in the morning Eastern time. Normally 1 or 2 of those get slotted into the 1 o'clock window. We got plenty of football to watch coming up this year.
Absolutely, George. And I just got to take a second and ask the NFL UK, what else did I have to do? I tweeted at you. I asked nicely to make the Giants-Packers game be on the 30th. And instead, you put the Broncos and the Jaguars on the 30th, and you put the Packers on the 9th. I can't now convince my fiance to go to London for our honeymoon. But like George mentioned, there is definitely a lot of football I'll be watching. I'll probably be watching the game on my honeymoon because she'll be sleeping and be able to watch it at 9:30 in the morning or earlier if you're on the West Coast doing those 6:30 a.m. starts. That would be too early for me, so I'm definitely glad I live on the East Coast.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, if there's football at 9:30 a.m., even if there's football at 6:30 a.m., you're going to wake up for it. I mean, we could say it's too early, but either you're going to wake up for it or for some reason the night before you're going to be like, now I can't sleep.
Yeah, especially if it's one of your teams, and we do have some good matchups. I mean, especially those London games, Vikings Saints. 2 teams that could potentially be fighting for wild card. I mean, they're playing early in the season, so it won't have too much playoff implications. But it is 2 high-powered offenses. Giants, Packers. Packers first time there. 2 historic franchises. Broncos, Jags. We'll get to see Russell Wilson and the London home team, Jacksonville. They always play well over there. And Germany, they're finally getting a game, and they're getting Seahawks, Buccaneers. I mean, it'd be better if Russell was on the Seahawks, but still, they're getting Tom Brady. So a lot of great games for the fans across the pond.
Definitely. And then you go a little south for a Monday Night Football game in Mexico later in the year. I think it's in November. 49ers Cardinals, divisional, could have big playoff implications. That's another fantastic matchup as long as that field holds up, unlike a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I'm surprised Mexico even got a second chance after that disaster a few years ago, but let's just hope they don't mess this one up, or else they're not going to get any more games after this.
No, I know maintaining a field down at Estadio Azteca, something like that. I think that's the name, down in Mexico City. It's tough, but I hope they held it together. It should be a good matchup there. And then, like I said, there were a couple of teasers towards the schedule released already earlier this week. The big one here, week 2, Monday Night Football doubleheader. Tyler's Titans are traveling to the Bills at 7:15 East, and then Vikings at Eagles, 8:30 East. Interesting that they're overlapping them a little bit, but it helps us East Coast fans not have to stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning, I guess. But the second half of Titans Bills and the first half of Vikings Eagles is going to overlap.
Like, I know you don't want to start a Monday Night Football game too early because people are still at work. Well, normal people. So you want to give them enough time to get home from work to still be able to watch the game. But I don't like the fact that they overlap, especially as much as they do. I wish they would have spread it out a little bit more, but or even if it overlapped, but it was like the fourth quarter covered the first quarter, so then at least you're not missing much of the second game. But I personally am excited for this as a Titans fan because a Monday Night Football game this early in the season means we still at least get some recognition. And I know before the season even starts, the Bills are going to be favorites for this game, but the Titans have owned the Bills on primetime football the last 2 seasons, starting with the COVID Bowl where they were missing their entire team and they still whooped the Bills. And then last year, again, the Bills were heavy favorites in the game and we whooped them. So hopefully the trend continues and we do it again this year.
I think all Titans fans are excited for this week 2 Monday night doubleheader because they can watch the first half and then they can go watch their boy A.J. Brown on the Eagles game in the second half, and it's like he's still on the team.
We don't call him our boy anymore. I mean, if he would have moved on like Devontae Adams did from the Packers and was respectful and said, I appreciate everything and still respected the fans, I think AJ would be a lifelong favorite of Titans fans. But he is not turning out to be the guy that I thought he was. And a lot of Titans fans are very sour towards him now.
Definitely
I'm going to have to watch my boy AJ Brown in that game a little bit closer, but I'm just trying to pick on Tyler here. Interesting Vikings-Eagles matchup. There's been a little bit of a mini rivalry between them since the 2017 NFC Championship and a lot of jabs back and forth with we got Justin Jefferson because you can't draft wide receivers. See if the Eagles wide receivers step up against the Vikings on a game 2 of a Monday night doubleheader. But the other big news, Christmas will have a game this year. We got Broncos at Rams, and even bigger, the first regular season game on Nickelodeon. We might get a wild card and a late season game on Nick this year. I know I'm a big fan. What do you guys think?
Nickelodeon games are the best. That's all. That's my take.
I like what Nickelodeon's doing. I mean, it's fun for us being 90s kids looking back and having the nostalgia, but honestly, if it's a smart thing by the NFL to do, because if you want the NFL to be a profitable business for years to come, you need to build up that young fan base, get them interested in football at a young age so they become diehard fans when they do get older and understand the game more. So I love what they're doing. I think it's a smart move.
Definitely. Great move by the NFL. Should be entertaining. We'll probably be switching back and forth between those two in my household on Christmas. But just another reminder, the schedule release completely comes out on Thursday at 8. There's probably going to be another game or two announced the morning this podcast is released. So keep an eye out on all our news sources. We'll be doing some retweeting on our Twitter as well. More TV news. Tom Brady on retired, but he's making his moves for post-retirement. He signed a 10-year deal with Fox to commentate their games. He appears to be the next Joe Buck. He's going to take the lead commentator spot. And the other news, he is making more money in his 10-year deal with Fox than he made in his, 20-something years playing football? Absolutely insane.
Yes, he'll actually be replacing Troy Aikman, as Kevin Burkhardt will be replacing Joe Buck.
There you go.
But yeah, 10 years, 375 million, so 37.5 per year for reference. That's ESPN is paying Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, who they just stole from Fox, 33 million a year combined. So he is making more than both of them. So heck of a signing for Fox. They're going to keep it going. If, obviously new quarterbacks will sign next year, but as it currently stands, if he retires, the 37.5 would be the fifth highest paid quarterback, and he won't even be playing. So Tom Brady is definitely getting set up for post NFL. This might be his last year. It could be 2 more years. But even after this deal, I'm pretty sure Giselle still has a higher net worth. So Tom Brady's good at a lot of things, but he's still not the best money earner in that family.
I understand he's got the experience. I understand he is the GOAT of the NFL. So I get the move, but at the same time, if you look at it a different way, Tom Brady, other than Patriots fans and Buccaneers fans, the rest of the league hates him and doesn't want to see his face. So why do you want to sign a guy that nobody likes to be a commentator for pro games for the next 10 years? It's like the NHL making Sidney Crosby their main face of the NHL after he retires. Makes no sense. I don't want to see it. So I get the experience level, but man, I'm not looking forward to seeing Tom Brady. If there's a different cast of it, I might just change the channel, get away from Fox.
Well, let's be honest. I don't know if I'm the only one on this. I'm not a big fan of Joe Buck and Troy Aikman either. The nice thing about them moving to Monday night is we probably will still have a couple weeks in the Manning cast to ignore them. So Brady replacing them, I almost see as a lateral move. Like, I hope he's a decent commentator, like early Tony Romo, not before he got like super annoying with his predictions thing. But I don't see it being any worse than what was there.
Okay.
Hey, I like the signing. I'm not a huge Tom Brady fan. Everyone knows that, but maybe it's just because his TikToks have grown on me. His social media personality has grown on me. So I'm excited to see what he can bring to the booth. And honestly, to keep a legend around, that's great for the NFL. But actual NFL news has happened as well. There was some running backs that were signed. The Ravens signed, who everyone thought was going to be a dominant fantasy back last year, probably will be irrelevant again this year with Mike Davis. And then the Dolphins, I believe George tweeted out, a crowded back room got more crowded. So they added Sony Michel. What are your thoughts on these two moves?
I mean, I don't
I'll
like
start with
crowded
Mike
backfields.
Davis. I feel like that's definitely the veteran. Oh, yeah, there's that. But Mike Davis, it's basically an insurance policy in case J.K. Dobbins can't be back, in my opinion. I know there's rumors of them potentially letting Gus Edwards go as well, but I don't see that one happening. I don't think Davis is going to be any bit relevant. Maybe he'll get a couple of snaps unless J.K. Dobbins ends up not returning
Oh,
at the
George
beginning of the
froze.
season from his injury.
George froze.
Yes, well, I can say that there's crowded backfields for both the Ravens and the Dolphins. So although both of these running backs have shown flashes in the past of being fantasy relevant, I don't think either one of them are fantasy relevant now. Um, they are not elite running backs. It's not like I know he's not available, but it's not like Christian McCaffrey just signed with one of these teams, a crowded backfield with Christian McCaffrey, and it is still going to be McCaffrey's backfield. There's also rumors of Kareem Hunt potentially getting released. And if Kareem Hunt gets released and goes to one of these teams, Hunt could easily become a favorite in that backfield. These guys are going to be depth moves. They're only going to be worth anything if they uh, have people in front of them get injured. So we'll have to wait and see if their market heats up during the season. But for right now, redraft leagues, you can pretty much ignore them.
I completely agree, Snyder, and I think we should probably take a quick break to see if we can get George back online. Alrighty, after some quick technical difficulties, we did get George back online just in time to talk some wide receiver news. Jarvis Landry, he's a big name still out there, and his market is heating up. I know there's a lot of talks right now with him potentially being interested in the Ravens being interested in him. Some other teams, I know the Browns are still interested in bringing him back, along with the Packers, Saints, and Titans. Some of those are because of lack of wide receiver veterans on their roster, but we'll see if any of those go down there. But a part of the Browns is he did turn down that 1 year offer. So we'll see if he actually does go back there. I know the Browns still want him. What do you guys think will be the best landing spot for Jarvis Landry?
Well, I am the resident Titans fan here, so it would be easy for me to comment on the Titans. Um, they could definitely use him. We have some young receivers that could start for us, be a nice three, but I don't think they're ready yet. So having a second guy so that we could have Traylon Burks, Robert Woods, and Jarvis Landry on the field at the same time, I think that would be a good solid three. I think he'd fit in perfectly. However, it is worth mentioning that Jarvis Landry did play on the Dolphins when Ryan Tannehill was the starting quarterback, and they did not get along. They did not have a good rapport. They apparently did not have a good relationship by the time they left the team. Haven't spoken since then. So I don't know if he'd really want to come to the Titans unless the deal is so much better, because I don't think he really wants to play with Tannehill. I personally think the Saints and Packers would both be great landing spots, but I mean, Cody, you can definitely fill us in on the Packers a lot more than I can.
Yeah, I think the Packers, I know they had made some calls at the beginning of free agency to kind of see what he was gauging his interest. I think now that we're post draft, I don't think Jarvis Landry fits. He's too much of a slot receiver. They still have Randall Cobb. Alan Lazard plays a lot in the slot. He's just not a guy that you're going to bring in and make a huge difference. If they're going to bring in a wide receiver, I would look at them to add a secondary boundary. And I don't even know if they're going to do that at this point, but like a Will Fuller or a Julio Jones would be names I would keep an eye on for the Packers. Someone on the outside where Jarvis plays more in the slot. So that's why I do think Baltimore makes a ton of sense. Let him play the slot. I know Mark Andrews does eat up a lot of the middle of the field, but give him another option that because they can play, a similar, not a two tight end set, but a very similar play style to two tight ends with Landry and Andrews, and I think that would benefit Lamar Jackson. I think Lamar could help get Landry there, and he would get to play the Browns, who essentially traded Amari Cooper and cut him because of the deal. So I know they did want him back, but there is probably some bad blood there. So the Ravens would be my favorite fit for me.
I don't know if he really is a perfect fit for any of these teams. If I had to say my favorite fit for scheme wise, it probably is the Titans because I think they could use the veteran presence and the wide receiver type of Jarvis Landry. But the Saints already have that big possession receiver, Michael Thomas. Yeah, there's a question of is he going to come back 100% healthy, but he already fits the niche that Jarvis Landry does. The Packers, I guess they could use a Jarvis Landry, but I feel like, yeah, you want to find a boundary receiver, like you said, so that's not the
This
greatest
guy.
fit there either. The Ravens' top two targets are Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman, both possession type receivers like Jarvis Landry is. So they would be more, settled going out there and trying to get a boundary receiver that could pop the top off as well. So don't really love the scheme fit for any of them. So my favorite has got to be the Titans.
See, my favorite for Jarvis Landry is actually the Browns. I think you would actually do really well going back to the Browns. I know that it's highly unlikely at this point, but that's where I think you would honestly fit the best. If you're just talking like, it's also worth noting there's still some other wide receivers out there on free agency market. Cody mentioned Will Fuller. My favorite fit for him is the Titans. I mean, Robert Woods is a possession guy. Traylon Burks is a big body guy. What they don't have is someone to take the top off of defenses with speed. Will Fuller, I think, would fit in really well there. There's Julio Jones. I think he would fit great on the Packers. They have so many young guys they just drafted. You're talking about one of the best receivers to ever play the game. Come in, coach up these young guys. And, the football nerds that we are would love to see a hookup of Aaron Rodgers to Julio Jones in the end zone just one time. Uh,
Wait,
just because it's like
Julio Jones scores touchdowns?
he can. He can.
Oh, wow.
If the refs allow the touchdown to stand, he can. So I
His
think he's
back
another good
spike
one.
was out.
All right, debate for another time. But another guy that's worth mentioning and might be a better fit for a team like the Saints, who I don't think are quite there yet and need a little bit, is just a safe receiver they can rely on, like Keelan Cole. He's another guy who's out there nobody's really talking about, but he's safe, he's healthy. He's played on nothing but bad teams his whole career, and he's still done well. So you put him on a better team. If you consider the Saints a better team at this point, I think that he could be a really good fit. And the other receiver that's still out there that we should talk about is Odell. We don't know if he's going to be ready to start the season, but he is a flashy receiver. I thought his career was over, as did everybody else when he, started falling off for the Giants and went to the Browns and did nothing. But he went to the Rams and he succeeded. I think he needs to go somewhere that has a good offensive scheme where he doesn't have to be the number one. But what team can wait on a wide receiver and let him succeed later?
I think Odell to the Packers makes a ton of sense. I think in the NFC, the Packers they have a roster good enough to compete all the way up until week 10, week 12. Like they're going to be in the playoff mix. They're going to be fighting for a top seed. Might not be the one seed, but they'll be right there for their division. And then let Odell come in, be a veteran wide receiver for a playoff run. I think he makes a ton of sense for Green Bay. They were in with him last year. And I think that also helps your rookies develop because they get to play most of the first half of the season. And then they get a veteran to come in. And hopefully, if they do decide to do that, they sign him early so he's in the building. He's working with the guys on the sidelines, doing those small things, being a part of the team, not just a late addition, even though I think a late addition would be a ton of fun. So there's definitely a lot of wide receiver talent out there that we'll have to pay close attention to. The only other news that is relevant. I think I kind of said that like the
Relevant?
word elephant.
Like yeah.
But Giants released a cornerback James Bradbury after not being able to get a draft or get a trade deal done through the draft. A top cornerback could make a huge impact on any defense where he goes. So that's a name to keep an eye on. We'll see where he ends up. But guys, I think we should just get right into what everyone's been waiting for and kick off our 2-round Dynasty Rookie Mock Draft.
Yes, we are going to be drafting rookies here this week. So, like I said at the top of the show, even if you don't have a dynasty team, this is still a helpful exercise because you can see who some of these guys are that will be at the top of this rookie class, who might be guys you take in the early, mid, even late rounds in your redrafts that can be relevant now. So, for the rules for this mock, we're going to do offense only, obviously just rookies, and every Couch GM will rotate having the final say on a pick. We did a random number generator before the show. Cody has the first pick. I will pick second, and Tyler will pick third. I don't think there's anything else to say. We can jump right into round one, pick one, and one Cody Roadcap.
Oh, I'm sorry. Before you go, are we doing a rotating pick or are we doing a snake draft?
Just rotating.
Perfect.
Yes. So most rookie drafts, if you do not know, work like the NFL draft. So team one will pick first in round one and round two. So
Got it.
Awesome. Well, we'll kick it off here with number one pick. I have it, and there is a clear and obvious choice in this draft. I know when we did our instant reaction show a little bit last week, we kind of debated this topic, but I've now had a week to sit on it, and this choice is so clear and obvious. It's going to suck for you Michael Carter truthers out there, but it is, in fact, Breece Hall, the running back for the New York Jets. He was taken early in the second round. I know people still love Michael Carter out there, but he was a fourth-round pick. I know he did look good. I know running backs can be good in the later rounds, but they had a running back that they saw produce, and they still said, hey, Breece Hall is a special running back. We need to go get him. He can do everything. He can run. He can pass block. He can pass catch. We're seeing the NFL go to running back by committees. I don't think there's going to be too much longer of true true workhorse running backs. And while it will be a little bit of a committee, Breece Hall will be the number one guy. So for me, this is a no-brainer.
yeah, I mean, most talented running back in the draft. I was hoping he would fall somewhere other than the Jets and we'd be able to see Michael Carter have another shot with a better offense around him, but the Jets did not agree, and we'll adjust accordingly. I think that brings me up here at pick two. And I was the person who threw a hot take out last week saying that I thought the top wide receiver for fit was Christian Watson to Green Bay. But he's not number two on my list. He's not the first wide receiver on my list. And that, especially because of opportunity, is Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. We know that they are a wide receiver wasteland right now. They might not be the best situation at quarterback, but this man's going to get opportunities. He still appears to be an NFL ready wide receiver. So give him a shot, and it's going to be his wide receiver core first shot at least.
All right, I got the third pick. And I'm going to go with, I can't believe that this team is going to be featured twice in the draft already, but I'm going with the New York Jets, and I'm going with wide receiver Garrett Wilson. Uh, Look, I understand they do have Corey Davis still. They do have Elijah Moore, who they drafted last year. And I do understand that Zach Wilson had a struggle bus kind of a season last season. So it's hard to trust him. However, the Jets, you heard it for so long where they were trying to go get uh, Devontae Adams. They were trying to get A.J. Brown. They're trying to go get all these big receivers because they don't trust their receiver group. They want someone to come in and be their top dog. And I think that's what Garrett Wilson can be. That's why they drafted him so highly. And he's a stud. I think he's going to come onto this team and he's going to shine. So Garrett Wilson, 2 New York Jets already.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah, I think that is the clear. I think what we did 1, 2, 3 is pretty consistent on how most drafts will go. I do want to just touch on Drake London real quick, and this will tie into my pick as well. But when we're talking dynasty, we're not always talking what we think will be best this upcoming season. It's a long-term projection, and don't forget Drake London. After this year, he'll be paired up with Calvin Ridley. I mean, he is technically suspended indefinitely, but we expect him to be back after 1 year. Falcons might not be that great this year. They might get one of those young rookie quarterbacks coming out of college next year, like CJ Stroud or Bryce Young. So Drake London, a year in the NFL, getting a solid running mate coming back next year, a solid quarterback option. Not saying that Mariota is not a good quarterback. I think he can still put up this year. But I really do like the long-term projection of Drake London. With all that said, I'm going to use that for the same reasoning of why I'm picking the person I am at number 4. This is more of a long-term projection. One, because he might not play right away this season, but I've told you all along he was my favorite wide receiver in the class. I think he was the best wide receiver in the class, and that would be Jamison Williams. Pair him with Amon-Ra St. Brown. That's another good running mate. Jared Goff. Snyder loves him more than anyone on this podcast. He's a quality quarterback. He's supported two, fantasy relevant wide receivers before. I think when Williams gets back, Williams comes healthy. Uh, he can have as much breakout potential as always. So getting him with pick 4, I think, is such a solid value.
Man, I mean, there's no arguing that he could end up being the best wide receiver in this class. And yeah, it is a long-term game, which is why you would take somebody who might not start the season, but he still wasn't my third wide receiver on my board. So very interesting projection there, but I do like it. I think that wide receiver core in Detroit could be very dangerous once he gets on the field. Bringing me on to pick 5 now. Obviously, only one running back taken. I'm going to go ahead and take the second one. I've been talking up James Cook for a long time, but it's not going to be him here. I'm going to go with Kenneth Walker, running back from Seattle. There's been a lot more talk recently about how that running back room is going to shake out. Recently, it was reported that Chris Carson is likely to be cut this offseason. Whether that's because of injury, we're unsure. Maybe it's a cap situation, but that would open the door up for Kenneth Walker. He's going to be splitting with just Rashad Penny. So that is a very interesting call. On a 1-year deal, Penny, do they give the first shot to the rookie? Unsure, but good upside pick at pick 5, especially.
Especially since you mentioned Penny is on a 1-year deal. Again,
Yes.
It might not be this year. It might be more of a carry. Penny might even start the season, but Walker, another guy they took in the top 40, like this is a guy that they're committed to. We know Pete Carroll loves to run the ball, so I think him being the second running back off the board makes a ton of sense.
But now that Cody has reminded us twice that dynasty drafts, we are worrying about the future. I'm going to take a total dump on that and pick a guy who can produce right away, and that's why I have him ranked so highly. Because sometimes that's nice. Maybe your dynasty team does need someone who can produce right now, and that is going to be for pick 6, Treylon Burks for the Titans. Not just a homer pick. This guy is expected to be the number 2 wide receiver for the Titans, and I understand they are a run-first team, but I think after Derrick Henry's injury last season, they're going to go a little bit easier on Henry's workload this year, especially drafting a backup running back. I think they're going to try to ease Henry a little bit, not overwork him. I think they're going to turn a little bit more to the passing game. That's why they focused on the pass game so much. There is still potential of, a Jarvis Landry, a Will Fuller, Keelan Cole coming in there and being a number 3 wide receiver, but Treylon Burks should still be the number 2 in this offense. Whether he gets a connection with Tannehill, I'm not sure. But he should be a stud in this offense, a definite focal point. So this is a guy that should be good for you years to come, and he should also be able to contribute right away.
Yeah, I think you make some solid points. I know Treylon Burks, I was not a huge fan of his during the draft process. I know why people like his tape. I know why the Titans felt comfortable trading away A.J. Brown and getting the instant replacement in Treylon Burks. I think it's a great fit for Tennessee, so another solid pick. I believe I'm back on the clock, George. If I'm skipping your pick, feel free to cut me off. But if obviously your team would not be, 1, 2, 3. It's not a 3-man dynasty league. But if it was, I'd be having the draft of like all my favorite players. And at number 7, I'm taking Chris Olave, a solid guy. He was considered the most pro ready coming out. He's an excellent route runner, and the Saints made a lot of trades. And if you go back and calculate all the picks that they gave up essentially to go get Chris Olave, it is like a mind blowing that they would give up that much draft capital for a wide receiver. So a guy they love, a guy that's ready to come in and compete in the NFL. He's an excellent complement to Michael Thomas if he's back and healthy. If not, I think he can be a wide receiver 1. So again, this is a semi-deep wide receiver class, but getting Chris Olave number 7 in a rookie draft, makes me feel great for if you were competing in the playoffs last year, you can still get solid talent as we get near the end of the first round.
Yeah, he was a draft crush of mine too, so you don't have to sell that pick on me. But he was the third wide receiver on my board. So yeah, I think that's a steal there at pick number 7. And now at pick 8, I mentioned him last pick. I'm going to go ahead and pick James Cook for running back out of Buffalo. So this pick, you're in the back half of the first round. You can take a little bit of a risk. Running back's a tough position to fill. So I'm hoping on Devin Singletary's second half last year being a bit of a fluke. And 2, I'm hoping that they use James Cook in the passing game. Because just like rushing quarterbacks are a cheat code, pass catching running backs can be just as well if they get the volume. Evidenced by Christian McCaffrey, as much volume as he was getting, a lot of it was in the pass game. He was the number 1 running back because of all those PPR points. So I'll go James Cook and hope for the best here. I have him a little higher than a lot of experts do, but I have faith that he's going to be used in that offense, and it is a high-powered offense.
All right. Well, I have pick 9, so I'm gonna let another good player for Cody fall to him at pick 10. And I'm going to go with a different guy. I'm going to go wide receiver Skye Moore out of Kansas City at pick 9. Now, I think Skye Moore fell in the draft a lot further than I was expecting and a lot further than a lot of people were expecting. Kansas City just lost Tyreek Hill. They traded him away. And who's their number 1 receiver right now? Juju Smith-Schuster. So are we really believing that Juju is going to have like this end-all be-all season and he's going to take all the receptions for Kansas City? No. Now, there's a lot of mouths to feed in Kansas City, and it's going to be one heck of a wide receiver battle over there. It's going to be interesting to see who makes a squad and who doesn't, but Patrick Mahomes is still young. I think he's going to want to build a repertoire with Skye Moore so that the two of them can have a long-standing future on this team and build championships together. So I think he's going to adopt him under his wing, and I think Skye Moore is going to be a focal point in this offense. It can't all go to Travis Kelce, and Kansas City's never been known for a good run game, so I think it's going to be through the air. Patrick Mahomes is still going to want to be a league leader in passing. So we've seen the fourth string wide receiver for Kansas City be fantasy ownable in years past because they throw the ball so much. So this guy has potential to be the number 2. And honestly, depending on how he plays, could even end up being the number 1 wide receiver for this team. Even if he doesn't produce that highly right away, he could be it within the next couple of years, especially because keep in mind, Juju did only sign a 1-year deal with Kansas City.
I definitely agree the sky is the limit for Skye Moore.
Oh, God.
Okay.
All right, I'm leaving the podcast.
Well, I got Tyler out of here. He's leaving the Batcave. No, not really. But no, he's only down here at pick 9 because he wasn't, the best, most polished wide receiver in the draft. But really, the potential is huge for Skye Moore. You're right. He's in a perfect situation with the perfect quarterback. He fits a niche that they lost with Tyreek Hill. I love that pick.
Yeah, he fell because he's undersized, but we've seen what the Chiefs can do with an undersized wide receiver before. I'm not saying he's going to be the next Tyreek Hill, but there is potential there to be at least 80% or 75% of what Tyreek Hill was. So I do like the pick. At pick 10 here, this is a tough for me. There's 2 guys I'm looking at my board. So I'm going to go with the guy I would pick over the situation. Some might say you should take the guy that was actually drafted in the first round. I'm going to go with the guy that was drafted at pick 34. I'm going with my guy C-Dub, Christian Watson, Green Bay Packers. Again, this is more of a projection pick because he is a little bit rawer. He's coming from a small school. He might not make a huge impact in week 1, but he has the second highest relative athletic score of all time behind Calvin Johnson. Take that for what it's worth for you. 6'4", runs a 4.3, incredible athlete, can catch the ball, can take end arounds. He is going to be an explosive piece for the Green Bay Packers for years to come. Them getting him in the second round was good value. Getting Christian Watson at pick 10 is great value in your Dynasty Rookie Draft.
I like it. I mean, I talked obviously last week about how much I like the fit for him. And if there's any quarterback that's going to get him up to speed quickly, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. Not saying he's going to be the biggest wide receiver weapon in year 1, but watch out for a good second half going into a strong year 2 for Christian Watson, in my opinion. At pick 11, I am between two wide receivers, and that's Jahan Dotson and George Pickens. I know Cody's probably thinking, go with Pickens, and it's one of his draft crushes, but I'm going to go with Dotson, who was drafted to the Washington Commanders. I almost said Redskins and football team in my head. I don't know what was going on there, but this team loves Dotson. They were raving about how much they wanted him in the draft. They traded down to get the wide receiver that they wanted because they knew that they didn't want any of the guys above him. So they are a team that could use another wide receiver. We'll see how much he is involved in the offense with Carson Wentz there now, but he definitely is in favor with that coaching staff and that front office. So he's going to get the opportunity.
All right. Well, it's my pick. And you kind of just laid it out there of who the next pick should be. So I'm going to take the bait, go with the Georgia Bulldog. I'm going with George Pickens. I don't recommend drafting anybody with the first name George usually because everybody I know named George sucks. So I don't recommend it. But George Pickens should be a very good asset for Pittsburgh. Now, keep in mind they do still have a lot of weapons over there, so he might not be a contributor right away. He might not be the number one option for the Steelers, might not even be the number two option for the Steelers in his first year. But like Cody has said before, just because they might not be a contributor right away does not mean they're not a good asset for Dynasty. You're looking for somebody that could contribute down the road and help lead you to some championships. So I can see some Pickett to Pickens happening very soon. And he could be a contributor for you on your team by year 2.
Yes, definitely. Very interesting that both you guys picked, rookie wide receivers that have solid number ones already on their team respectively, but are in the last year of their deal. So again, rookies are looking for the future. I like both those picks. I'm back on the clock here, and this is around the area now. We've gotten through the upper echelon of talent. So you're going to start looking at your team. If you're quarterback week, maybe you're looking at taking Kenny Pickens. If you're desperate at tight end, there's a couple tight ends you might be willing to take here. But I'm still going to go with my board, and the guy I'm going to go with at pick 13 might be a surprise to some people. I didn't look at any expert rankings. I did my own. And right here at pick 13, I'm going to go with John Mechie III to the Houston Texans. He's coming off of an ACL injury. He was credited as being discount Olave. You know how much I love Olave coming out or into the draft. He is coming off the ACL there. I like the pairing with Brandon Cooks. Davis Mills showed something last year, so he can at least throw the ball around, whether he's the long-term solution or not. But the Texans did trade up to get Mechie in the second round, so they like him. I like him. It seems like a perfect fit. And I think it's an underrated wide receiver. But I think he is a pretty safe bet to be at least a number 2 or number 3, borderline number 2 wide receiver with number 1 wide receiver potential.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like you're just reading right down my board at this point. I was hoping Mechie would fall to me here, but he did not. So I'm going to be the guy that takes the first quarterback, and I'm going to go with Kenny Pickett here at pick 14. So, yeah, like Cody said, when you're getting into round 2, you're out of that top tier talent. You're going to kind of look at what position you need, but I think this right around here is a good spot to take Pickett. He may not start in year 1, but I think he is going to be the long-term guy for Pittsburgh. So, the safest quarterback in this draft class going early to mid round 2, I think that's a good value. If you see someone take him earlier, let him have him because most likely his ceiling is not going to be that high. And if they were, props to them for taking him early.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on where your team's at. I can say that's a terrible pick because you took him way too early. However, I'm in a dynasty league with you two boys where Cody and I are currently looking at our starting quarterbacks. His is Sam Darnold. Mine's Ryan Tannehill. It's just we're not looking beautiful at quarterback right now.
I thought it looked a lot better when I had Justin Fields and Mac Jones, and then the Patriots and Bears got neither of them any help. No offense to Taekwon Thornton, who they drafted in the second round, but that's not what they needed.
But yeah, so it's if your team needs that, that's a good thing to go with. And this is also a good time in the draft to, if there's no talent that you think can contribute to you right away, or maybe there's no talent that you need to rely on the next couple years. Maybe your team is actually pretty stacked and set. This is a good time to maybe think about some safety picks for your team. If you are a Derrick Henry owner, maybe go get Hassan Haskins. If you are a Josh Jacobs owner, maybe go get Zamir White. Go get your handcuff to your starting guy at the off chance that they go down, so you're not struggling. However, I will say that running back is probably the hardest position to find. And especially this year, it's going to be hard to find a running back that you think can contribute right away. But there is one that I do think can contribute right away. And that's why, even though he was not a high draft pick, and even though he is probably not ranked highly by any experts, I'm going to go with Dameon Pierce, running back for Houston. Uh, Again, he was pick 107 in the draft. So he was not a high drafted running back. However, their only two running backs on that team right now are Marlon Mack and Rex Burkhead. So two guys that are past their prime, not anything special. Do I think he's going to be the number one running back right away for Houston? No. Do I think he can earn that job and steal it by the end of the season? Absolutely. And with these two guys in the later stages of their career, Dameon Pierce could end up emerging as a starting running back for the future. And with running backs being hard to find anymore, I don't see any reason why you don't just take the chance on him.
Definitely would be a reach on my board, but you make a solid argument, and I'll back it up a little bit. Who was pick 107 last year? Michael Carter, a guy we saw produce. Granted, they did take a rookie running back this year. The Jets did, but we've seen running backs from that exact same position produce in a fantasy, produce fantasy wise. So it's a solid pick there.
I mean, look at the Broncos. I mean, when they drafted three running backs in the same year, and the top two drafted running backs, Devontae Booker and I can't remember
Royce Freeman.
Royce Freeman ended up doing nothing. But the guy they took in the 7th round, or was he even undrafted? I don't even remember.
Undrafted.
Philip Lindsay.
Undrafted. Yep. Philip Lindsay. He ended up being the starter. Just because a guy's not drafted high, especially at the running back position, it's all about production. It's all about what a guy can do for you. So it doesn't bother me that he was drafted late.
And don't worry, Tyler, I'll back you up too. He was actually the next running back on my board. So I don't think it was a reach. I like the potential opportunity for Pierce in Houston.
Alrighty, so out 2-1 on Dameon Pierce. I did have a running back higher who I'm still not going to take yet because I think there's some options out there. I'm debating between another wide receiver, but I'm going to skip on that one, even though I think there are some good ones. And I am going to take the top tight end in the class, Trey McBride for the Arizona Cardinals here. Again, they have Zach Ertz. They love Zach Ertz. Their offense made, strides when they got Zach Ertz, but Zach Ertz is near the end of his career. Trey McBride can come in, learn from Ertz. I'll tell you again, rookie tight ends are often bad. So, this is not a guy that you're going to, you need another tight end this year outside of Trey McBride, but I like his upside. I like the offense that he's going to be going to. I like how they use the tight ends. I think he can replace Zach Ertz once Zach Ertz moves on in Arizona. So for more of a long-term projection and the best tight end in the draft, I'll take Trey McBride at pick 16, the 6th pick in the 2nd round.
Okay, I mean, he was not somebody who was in my top 20, but he was right there after just because, I mean, if you're a tight end needy team, you always want to take that stab. I don't like the fact that they signed Zach Ertz to a long-term deal coming into this season and then trying to go and get a tight end in that same system, but you never know how it's going to work out there. That is a top-scoring offense, so it's not a bad move in that way. I'm going to go back to the running backs, and I'm wondering if this is the next running back on Cody's system. It's Rachaad White out of Tampa Bay. Now, I understand there's also running backs in front of him there, but the opportunity that if there is an injury to a Leonard Fournette, he could pop in and play really well. They don't really have a secondary running back there. It's now Giovanni Bernard, who is a pass-catching back. He's a niche kind of player. And then potential opportunity to play in the future. So I'll take my shot on that one. It might be something that does not work out, but at this point of the draft, most of these guys probably are not going to work out for your team.
And that's depressing. We're only in round 2. You want these guys to work out on your team?
The sad truth of fantasy, especially drafting rookies, they're unpredictable.
Yeah. Right. So I'm on the board now. We were going to do 2 rounds to 20 picks, but I'm saying we should go to 21 picks just so I get a pick too.
That's
that way
fine.
it's fair.
Let's go 3 rounds.
3 rounds now? I don't think I know enough rookies. We're saying none of these guys are going to contribute as is. Okay, so pick 18. I think this guy has fallen a little bit in our draft, so I'm going to take him. And it's not because I think he's that special of a wide receiver, but it goes off a need, and that is David Bell, wide receiver for Cleveland. I don't think he's a bad receiver. I just don't think he's as good as some of these other guys. But Cleveland went out and they got Deshaun Watson. They want offense. They don't think Baker's the guy anymore. They got rid of Jarvis Landry. So, well, they didn't get rid of him. They cut him and tried to bring him back, and he didn't want to come back. But they don't have Odell. They don't have Jarvis. They need some offensive firepower, and David Bell is a guy that can slot in right away and contribute in year one. And even if a guy is not as good as some of the others can be down the road, sometimes there is more value in a guy that can contribute right away. Because, I mean, look at last year. Injuries were disgusting. So even if he's not a guy you plan to be starting, there could be 6 injuries to your team, and suddenly you're running out of options, and having a guy who is possibly the number 2 for Cleveland with Deshaun Watson throwing the ball, that's going to be a guy you're going to be happy to start once your other guys go down. So I think this is a good pick late in the second round.
Yeah, David Bell was the next guy on my board, so I completely agree with your assessment there. And for me, because this is our last pick, I would love to go an extra round, but I don't think time-wise or the guys want to. So for me, this one is tough. There's 2 guys I'm really looking at here. They're both wide receivers, and it's which one do I think is in a better situation? And for that reason, I'm going to go with the guy that's actually not the next guy on my board. He's 2 down, but I think he's in a better situation. That is Jalen Tolbert, the wide receiver out of Southern Alabama or some small school like that. But don't let the small school scare you. He is a solid pass catching option. He's going to the Dallas Cowboys. Yes, I know they signed Michael Gallup to a long-term extension, but he's coming off of a torn ACL, and that deal is pretty easy to get out of. They took Tolbert in the second round. He's going to come in right away. He's going to replace Amari Cooper. I would not be surprised if, halfway through the first season, Jalen Tolbert looks like the best rookie in this class. And then the only issue, the reason he went the second round is I think he doesn't have a high of a ceiling. I think he's going to plateau. He's always most likely going to be a solid number 2 wide receiver. But I think that's great in Dallas with a high-powered offense. You're pairing him with CeeDee Lamb. You're also tying him to Dak Prescott, a long-term quarterback. So I do love Jalen Tolbert here in the end of the second round.
Interesting pick. Someone that I would maybe think about more of a late round flyer, but that's just me not liking those 3-4 wide receiver systems. There's a very good chance he ends up being somebody who is relevant, especially if after an injury or something like that. So not a bad move. We're on to pick 20 out of 21 now because Tyler wants his extra pick, and I don't blame him. I'm going to talk about one of those handcuffs, and the Chargers went out and drafted a running back, one that was considered a very high talent in the draft, Isaiah Spiller. So I don't know if he's going to get the most volume right off the bat, but he should slot right in at running back 2 for the Chargers behind Austin Eckler. Austin Eckler has been known to miss a couple of games every season for injury. He could get a shot to play as a starter a few times, earn a couple more carries. Long-term option, probably a good shot at it just because the running back shelf life is low. I don't know if Eckler's going to be gone in the next year or 2, but 3-4 years down the road, if they like Spiller and want to get him on a second contract that's cheap because he hasn't played much, that's a possibility. So maybe more of a long-term play or a handcuff if you're somebody that owns Eckler. Keep an eye on Isaiah Spiller.
All right, so I got pick 21. This is the last pick in our mock draft. And before I make my pick, I want to give a shout out to one guy just because I'm proud of the team. And that's Alec Pierce, wide receiver for the Colts, because he was pick 53, second round pick. Finally, the Colts were like, you know what? Maybe we should get a wide receiver. I've been saying for years they need a wide receiver. They keep drafting number 2 wide receivers, and then that's about it. Finally, they went out and got another guy, so this guy could be a contributor right away. I'm not saying he's going to be a top tier talent, but at least they do have something else to throw to on that team. So kudos to them. He's a guy you could definitely target in the second round. But I'm going to go with my guy. I wanted to add a pick just so I could throw this guy's name out there because, a little bit of a homer, but honestly, I do think it's kind of fun. And that is Malik Willis. I know it's a second quarterback, and I understand that he needs a lot of work before he becomes a starter. I get that. But the Titans should be moving on from Ryan Tannehill following this year, so he could start as soon as next season. He's got the speed that he could be on some of those flashy trick plays as early as this season. And look, after Ryan Tannehill's comments about not mentoring Malik Willis, after his horrible showing in the playoffs and blowing a game against the Bengals, the second Tannehill has one bad game, the whole fan base is going to start chanting for the backup. Um, and we know that even though the starting quarterback could still be pushed a few games after that, eventually the fan base gets their way and the backup does come in. So there's a chance he even plays this year. I don't think he should. I think he needs work. But this guy ran a 4.340. He is a speedster. He is great with his legs. And if you watch the highlight videos, he can throw the length of the field. He's got a strong arm. Those two things are dangerous. And before you say, he might not be that great of a quarterback, so why would I want him in fantasy? No shots here at George, but let's talk about Jalen Hurts. I do not think this guy is that great of a quarterback. And we are saying that he needs to really step up or he's going to be replaced. But guess what? He was owned in fantasy last year and he was started because he has the ability with his legs and he can still make things happen with his arm when he needs to. I will rag on Lamar Jackson every single year because I still don't think that guy can throw. But despite the fact, he is still a fantasy asset because legs are a big thing with quarterbacks now. So you got a quarterback who runs a 4.340, is tricky with his legs. He can put up fantasy points for you. No, he might not be a starter this year, but you don't want to watch somebody else in the league having a quarterback putting up big points against you and getting super annoyed that you didn't draft him when you could take him, honestly, probably later than the second. You can wait in the draft and get him. So someone to look at.
I'll throw a little dynasty tip in with that pick too. If you're a team that is projecting forward, maybe needing a quarterback, that's a great pick because, like you said, not only does he have the ability to run and be an asset that way, but he's not going to be a starter this year. Going out and get a quarterback a year early is normally a good thing. You can number one, get one a little later in the draft. My example, how I stole Justin Herbert from under you guys in that same dynasty league that you guys are both fighting for quarterbacks now. I had Carson Wentz and Ryan Fitzpatrick at that point. I wasn't desperately in quarterback need. That was obviously when Carson Wentz was still an Eagle and he looked like he could be an option for the future. But I went out and got Justin Herbert. Now I'm the team that's sitting quarterback pretty, and you guys are fighting for that spot. So it does not hurt when you get down to the late second, third, fourth rounds in your draft, taking a stab at a quarterback and seeing if it works.
Yeah, Desmond Ritter's another guy you can look at as a potential late round quarterback. Probably won't start the year, might not even start at all this year, although Mariota does have some injury history, so it wouldn't surprise me if Ritter does step in at some point. But he's another late round guy. And, a little tidbit about Malik Willis before I finally stop talking about him is I understand that he should not play this year. It should be Ryan Tannehill's show all year. However, this is the last year of Ryan Tannehill's deal. They do have an option they can pick up for next year if they want one more year with him. I just don't see it happening personally. So the Titans know that there's some potential big quarterbacks in the draft next year. They're going to want to see what they have in Malik Willis before that draft happens, knowing if they need to trade up and get their guy of the future for real, or if Malik Willis really is their guy of the future. Only spending a third round pick on him this year means they don't have to have Malik be their guy. Draft him in the first round, he's going to have to be your guy. They got him in the third, late third even. So they're going to want to see what they got in Malik Willis before that draft rolls around. I would not be surprised at all if they find a way to force Malik Willis into the game this season and see what they got out of him. So he could even be a late season contributor for you.
All righty, George, do you have any honorable mentions? Because I have a whole list and I don't want to steal any of your guys.
I think I'm only going to throw one out there, and that will be Tyler Allgeier of the Atlanta Falcons. So I've talked about how many times Cordarrelle Patterson may be playing more wide receiver this year because they are a wide receiver needy team. He's also like 34 or 35 years old. He can't shoulder all those running back carries he was getting at the end of last year. I think that's a big reason why he started to slow down. They do have Damian Williams on the roster, who, if you know, I love Damian Williams. He was also a fairly solid fantasy contributor for a bit last year for Chicago, but he also has an injury history. There's a reason why he's bounced around on teams since he left Kansas City. He's not a long-term option. The only other two running backs worth noting on that depth chart are Tyler Allgeier and Quadre Olison. So maybe we're taking a stab later in the draft, somebody who could be a contributor if the cards fall right for him.
Yeah, definitely like that as an honorable mention. I will go through mine pretty quickly. I know I made a joke about it, but Taekwon Thornton, the Patriots did draft him as a second round pick. He's a speedster, uh, similar to like a guy like Marquez Valdes-Scantling. So, in that offense, how much fantasy value does he have? But he's a guy to keep a name on just because of his draft pedigree. Another name, this one stings too, but Tyrion Davis Price, running back that the 49ers drafted. They draft so many of them. We thought Elijah Mitchell was going to be good. But he's on that team. They don't have Raheem Mostert anymore. Jeff Wilson couldn't stay healthy last year, so keep an eye out for him. Brian Robinson, another running back, the guy out of Alabama, the power back, like him, in Washington, complimenting Antonio Gibson, could be a goal line stealer. Well, we've seen out of J.D. McKissick a little bit, but a guy that can come into those goal line situations. I believe Ron Rivera even commented on him and Antonio Gibson being similar to what he had in Carolina with Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams. They were both fantasy relevant running backs back in those days. Um, and then the last guy, because Snyder already mentioned on Desmond Ritter, who would have been my second quarterback taken. And we don't ever really talk about undrafted free agents when it comes to dynasty mock drafts and rookie drafts. And granted, we just finished up round 2, so he wasn't going to be taken. But Justin Ross, he's a wide receiver. He was a UDFA out of Clemson for the Kansas City Chiefs. If you don't know, he was the best wide receiver at Clemson as a freshman, and then he had a pretty serious neck injury. Some people didn't know if he'd be playing football again. That's why he essentially fell out of the draft. Think Peyton Manning neck injury, think Chris Carson neck injury, like serious, like what's not to like. But he's back. He's playing. We don't know how long his career will be, but he's definitely a guy that if you're, round 4, round 5, even round 3, like depending on your team, again, you're drafting Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, Justin Ross. If he was fully healthy, he'd be a top 100 player, and they got him as a UDFA. You know, not an offensive weapon in terms of fantasy, but there was some concerns the year L. Collins came out. He was going to be a first round pick. He fell all the way to UDFA, went to Dallas, became a star. Not saying it's going to happen with Justin Ross, but it does happen. Not very often, but it is the potential. And I really do like Justin Ross as like a late round flyer for your rookies that you should be drafting. That probably not a lot of people are going to hear about unless they're listening to the Couch GMs podcast.
Absolutely, Cody. I'll go over my 3 real quick. I know you said quick and then rambled on for a while, so thanks a lot for that. Kind of taking up my time here, but no, I'm just kidding. So my first guy, real quick, is crap. I just blanked. Wan'Dale Robinson for the Giants. I understand they had way too many receivers last season. However, none of them really stepped forward and emerged as a true number 1. So they went out and they got Wan'Dale at pick 43. So that tells me that they're not sold on the guys they have. I know it's a deep wide receiver room. I understand there is a bunch of people that will be fighting for those wide receiver spots, but I think this is a guy that could end up emerging because they are not sold on any of them. I hate saying the Colts twice in one draft as kudos, but I also like tight end Jelani Woods. He is my number 2 tight end in the draft. And like Cody said earlier, rookie tight ends suck, but this dude is 6'7", 253 pounds, but ran a 4.6 40. He's a big dude and he's got some quickness. He could be a really strong receiving threat for the Colts, especially because I'm still not sold on all their wide receivers. He could definitely be a strong guy to look at. And then finally, I have, man, I got to find my list here. I lost it.
I love your Jelani Woods comments. I'm still bummed he's not a Packer while you find your list. Definitely one of my favorite players.
I had a bunch of people I wanted to mention, but Cody actually knocked off pretty much all of them. My last one, and this one might sound stupid or might sound like a hot take, but it's Jerome Ford for Cleveland. He was a late round pick for Cleveland. He was pick 156, but they are looking at moving on from Kareem Hunt. There is rumors that he is going to be one of the people cut. And if Kareem Hunt is cut, Jerome Ford could move up as the number 2 running back. I know Nick Chubb is still there, but look how valuable Kareem Hunt was while Nick Chubb was still active and the number 1. They like using 2 running backs, especially since this guy is 5'10" and 210. Like, he is definitely a shiftier running back. He is a guy that can help out in the passing game. I think he could slide right on in to that Kareem Hunt role. So he's a guy that you might want to target, or even if nothing else, just be a handcuff if you're a Nick Chubb owner at a much cheaper price than Kareem Hunt was.
Man, I love that I said, let's go 3 rounds. And we just probably listed 9 honorable mentions that we could have totally just went 3 rounds. But we went through them a lot faster. So I think that was the better approach to it. But there's a lot of rookies to get excited about. Hopefully you guys are having your draft soon. If you're in an offensive only dynasty league, you don't need your draft to be 7 rounds or 5 rounds. Like 4 would be the max if you have non-IDP. I mean, heck, that's probably close for IDP as well. So keep your rookie draft short for your dynasty leagues. If it's a startup, good luck. But as always, thanks again for listening to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast.
And there has got to be some honorable mentions that we did not say. If your favorite team drafted a guy that you have some sneaky suspicions is going to break out and be huge, let us know about him. I want to hear your thoughts. If you are debating between a couple people in your rookie draft and you need some advice, reach out to us. We will answer you quickly, accurately. We'll give you some nice detail. We want you to win your draft. We want you to win your league. So let us help you. And the only way that's going to happen is if you get involved. This podcast is so much more fun for us and more fun for you when you get involved.
Yes, it is, Tyler, and thank you guys for listening in to another episode of the Couch GMs podcast. For Tyler Snyder and Cody Roadcap, I'm George Kerth. See you all next week.